I mean, I did better barefooted than anything else. But this to me is the most wonderful thing that could have ever happened, because I didn't know what life was like without him. Now, in the process of all this, my arthritis pain went away. The knots are still there, but it went away too. And so, after this happened, I decided, well, I guess being a scientist, I need to understand why this works. And I'm going to tell you about something that happened a couple of weeks ago that made me convinced that I actually have a handle on it, that I can communicate now with my body. And this was something that had never happened to me before. I had been to Richmond to see a family member for a couple of days, came back, went straight to the office, didn't go by the house, and walked into one disaster after another. I mean, one of my people hadn't been paid and was broken, was getting thrown out of our apartment, and my lab was a mess, and we were out of, we have, I did biomedical research, some with animals, and we didn't have any animal chow, and there were students lined up outside the door and 30 messages on the phone. Well, after a 4-hour drive back from Richmond, and about 5 hours of that, I was a basket case. Totally. About 5:30, I decided, I can't deal with this. I'm going home. There's not a disaster here that will wait till tomorrow. So I went home. I didn't do any work that night, no preparation for my classes the next day, nothing. Got up the next morning, his hand wouldn't move. It was swollen. Couldn't get my rings on. All my joints swollen and pain. I could do that, and that was about it. And so instead of rushing to the cabinet for the aspirin or Darmon or whatever, I tried to figure out, well, what stupid did I do yesterday to hurt this hand? Well, I didn't do anything stupid the day before. What had happened? I finally figured out that I had forgotten all my stress management techniques, all my priorities. I had put all the wrong stuff in front of me and not succeeded in solving a thing. The only thing I'd done is stress is related to the immune system very, very strongly. So my immune system kicked up, which is related to arthritis. I had inflammation in my joints, and that's why the hand was like this. So I walked around like this for a while, and fed my dogs and so forth. And in about an hour and a half, I looked down, and it wasn't swollen anymore. And I was able to do this. And I thought, you've got the answer. You've got the handle, because of the stress and the mindset. Now, that made me even more convinced that I need to try and explain why this works. We know that the mind and the body are intricately related in terms of control. There's something called the placebo effect, that if you do research on a medication and the doctor gives one group the real medication, he gives another group a sugar pill, and they don't know that it's not going to work, and both groups get better. The placebo effect has about a 60% cure rate. Now that's pretty high. If you think you're going to get better and you believe in this treatment, whatever it is, you're going to get better. And it's about 60%. Well, that is one evidence that the mind does influence your health problem. But the mind is nothing but electrochemical brain activity. Now, I'm not talking about the spirit. I'm talking about the mind and the body. We're all made of cells and a lot of salty water. And these cells have little receptors on them that receive messages, and we also have places we send messages. This happens in the brain, and it happens in the body. And we now know, through fairly recent research, that some of the chemicals that are made in the brain, called peptides, and that are responsible for pain and the elimination of pain, are also found in the body. We also know there are receptors on your muscles and glands and digestive tract that are sensitive to this. Now we also know now that every cell in your body has a memory. If you don't believe it, if you haven't ridden a bike for 20 years, go out and ride a bike. You don't think, okay, I put this hand here and I put this hand here and I put this foot here and I have to stop by doing this. You just get on and you ride it. You don't have to practice it. Something in your body remembered, but you're not consciously aware of it. So all of this speaks to the fact that there is communication. And here's how I think it goes. And this is my example. Years ago, the horse threw me, stepped on my foot, on crutches. Both my parents yelled at me, especially my dad. Totally undermined my confidence. Couldn't go out of the house for 2 weeks, so he was ever present. And what really was happening then was that the pain that I had then was being what we call classically conditioned. It's a kind of learning. And it was being classically conditioned to his anger and his yelling and his criticism and his undermining my confidence. Well, my body apparently never forgot that, because when I had to deal with my uncle a year and a half ago, who, my dad is long gone, but my uncle reminds me a lot of him. He's bossy, he's domineering, he orders people around, he's impossible to please, and I was having to deal with this. And what happened? First thing that happened is my right foot started hurting. Well, by the time about 4 months had passed of dealing with him off and on, both feet were hurting, I could hardly move. And when I came back after Christmas from taking care of him over Christmas, I came back in a wheelchair. Got off the airplane, the wheelchair waiting for me. That was it. That's when I started running around to all these doctors to see, can anybody do anything? But what I think happened is that my uncle reminded my cells in my body enough, as well as in my brain, but I wasn't conscious of this. This was not something that I thought, oh, gee, you remind me of my dad yelling at me. I didn't think that. But I think what happened was that my body remembered it, and it associates in classical conditioning anything similar, it's called generalization, will trigger that same kind of response. Now, the kind of therapy that Kent does is more than just Bowen therapy. He is reprogramming in some way the cells and reconditioning them to a new set of stimuli. So this shouldn't happen again. And my uncle has yelled and screamed at me quite a few times since then, but my feet don't hurt when he does. I feel like punching him, but my feet don't hurt.
He does sometimes.
I may. Hung up on the time too. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and I asked Ken about this because I still don't have enough insight into really what's going on with my body. I'm listening to it though. Was, why my right hand? Why not the foot or the other hand? My right hand, because I had lost control. I'm right-handed. My right-hand man was not getting paid. Everything that I normally am able to control was out of control, symbolized. So, they're telling me I have to quit, and I will tell you, if you have arthritis and want to be able to do that, or you want to be able to run around the block, go see this man right here, because he is a miracle worker. And the skeptic scientist in me still has problems with it. But I'm living proof, and I love it, because I don't hurt. Thank you.